There is an accepted belief in psychology that humans are composed of 5 dominant personality types. They are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These 5 traits are composed of smaller traits, which can overlap to some degree. Mostly, though, everybody is believed to be one of these 5 dominant traits. You can change your emotional being or your behaviors through moderate personality development. And while not a universally held belief, most psychologists feel that it is not possible to change your dominant trait. I disagree. Outside of the widely held belief about moderate personality, outside of the widely accepted theory of moderate personality belief, there is a small but steadily growing body of evidence indicating greater overall changes to personality may be possible. When coupled with the inclusion of psilocybin, better known as magic mushrooms, there is potential for an increase in neuroplasticity, leading to a radical resetting of personality. I know this to be true because thanks to microdosing psilocybin, I have changed completely. As a baby, I did not display the negative temperament that is considered to be the early indicator of a difficult personality. I was born with an insatiable hunger for life. This was made evident when I started crawling at 3.5 months and walking at 8 months. I had places to be. I turned my developmental feat into terror for my mother when I started throwing myself down the basement stairs for the sheer thrill of it. No baby gate was going to hold me. For context, the average first steps start at 12 to 15 months. A grandmother called me such a happy baby. According to the Big Five, I was going to grow up to be open. How then did I end up neurotic? Considered a negative trait, neurotic people often display qualities such as fear, anger, jealousy, frustration, envy, and so on and so on. For many years, I fit that description. I was a tornado of charm and aggression. On any given day, the person that showed up could become frighteningly different within minutes of arrival. I was the cause and the effect of my own social isolation. What took me from happy baby to angry adult was a volatile mix of things, starting with an undiagnosed neurological disorder that did not begin to get public attention until the early 1990s, ADHD. Now, in 1990, I was tested for ADD, but the differences in how it presents between girls and boys would not become evident or well known until decades later, leaving me one of many women of my generation to go undiagnosed until well into our 40s. Living with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD directly contributes to increased trauma. Some of it, physical trauma from carelessness during activities, see me later for my broken bone count, and lots of mental trauma from my childhood peers and adults alike. It became important to others that my insatiable life energy be made smaller by any means necessary. Attacked and bullied in and out of school, the same people I was told were my friends were the people making me afraid every day. Teachers often forced me to eat lunch alone as a form of punishment, which turned into birthdays alone and years of growing isolation. The worse my illness became, the more punished I was. The more punished I was, the more I suppressed or acted out in frustration. I did become smaller and angrier and depressed. It isn't hard to see how I went from an open personality to a neurotic before high school. I was only 14 when I had my first thoughts of suicide. Thanks to the effects of rumination, my thoughts went from light to dark and eventually got stuck there. Rumination is the process of thinking the same thoughts often enough that they will eventually become an interconnected roadway of neurons, repeating those thoughts without any prompting. This is how intrusive thoughts and cognitive emotional loops are formed. Rumination is how a passing thought I had as a hormonal 14-year-old turned into 30 years of near daily suicidal ideation. I didn't even know how sick those thoughts were until that ideation started to transform into action. Therapists will tell you that if you want to change your life, you have to change your thoughts first. In my 30s, it became clear that my thoughts had ruined my personality and were trying. Oh, I'm back. Still with me? Okay. So I reached deep inside myself for that last remaining spark I had left, and I let it guide me on a path of self-preservation. For 6 years, I reached out for help. But as an angry neurotic with a trauma-riddled brain, I struggled to hold down a job. So I was poor. And I had to go through America's pathetically underfunded mental health care clinics. There, I was told things like, I wasn't really poor, I was just spoiled and didn't need to keep a job. I couldn't have ADHD because I outgrew it at 18. And I was accused of pill seeking because sometimes I worked in a kitchen and cooks have a reputation for liking Adderall and the speediness of it. When they did begin to prescribe me medications, it was often to treat things I didn't have, which made me did have so much worse. I also grew physically ill. One day I took my dogs for a walk on Belle Isle, and I found myself standing in a sprinkler fully clothed, afraid I was going to pass out from the heat and dehydration of 3 days of vomiting. My thoughts were not improving. The ruts of rumination were only deepening. Thankfully, the human brain is an amazing machine of speed and adaptability. Throughout the course of a human life, our brains never stop changing. This is neuroplasticity. The best way to explain both neuroplasticity and rumination is to think of your thoughts as funding and your neurons, your brain cells, as interconnected roads. The roads that get the most funding stay strong and pothole-free, while the underfunded roads crumble away. This means that as we age, fewer new roads are built. Neuroplasticity still exists, it just becomes harder to fund. But remember, in order to change your life, you have to change your thoughts. So what if the road is long and nobody built an off-ramp? You have to get more funding. You have to bring your neuroplasticity back up. After all that therapy and medicine, I still had no diagnosis. My isolation had become all-encompassing. Nobody wanted to be around me, which was fine. I didn't want to be around them. It was at my lowest that I heard a rumbling on the internet about a potential new way to treat treatment-resistant depression. Psilocybin, magic mushrooms. Okay, so mushrooms have been having a moment for the last few years. But at that time, they were still pretty underground. It didn't matter. I was desperate. And I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. So I went online to some old message boards and I read everything. Then one sunny Saturday afternoon, I took a 1-gram macro dose, jumped into the psychedelic pool and asked to be healed. What happened was that psilocybin ripped me, hippocampus first, out of 30 years of suicidal ideation. That was 7 years ago. I have not thought about suicide once since that day. But I had to do it secretly because mushrooms containing psilocybin are a Schedule I narcotic, putting this valuable natural medicine out of reach of both patients and therapists alike. Therapists should have the right to learn about and recommend psilocybin to their patients without fear of losing their license. To get this, we need to increase research. There's a lot more going on, but we need more research into just microdosing. We also need for people like you to call representatives and talk to them and encourage the legalization. Or you can join Decriminalize Nature, an organization working to decriminalize psilocybin. Well, I started with a traditional size dose. Afterwards, I mostly stuck to a microdosing regimen. Microdosing is considered to be 1/10 the size of a 1-gram dose. James Fadiman, the foremost researcher and psychologist working with microdosing, says that there is a sweet spot when it comes to dosage amounts and that it varies from person to person. That sweet spot can be found when you have a change internally without triggering a full psychedelic trip. Your emotions and your energy lifts, your focus sharpens, and your ego is brought under control. It doesn't end there, though. If you recall, I mentioned being stuck in the ruts of rumination. Psilocybin had silenced the most frightening, intrusive thought I had first, while also getting started on that much-needed off-ramp. In 2020, a study was published in the journal Scientific Reports titled Emotions and Brain Function Altered Up to 1 Month After a Single High Dose of Psilocybin. Frederick S. Barrett and his co-authors found that the ruminative processes that contribute to the development and maintenance of mood disorders were undermined by the antidepressant effects in psilocybin. Those antidepressant effects can be found in the name of the medicine itself. The name psilocybin is derived from the active ingredient psilocin, which just so happens to be an exact replica of the serotonin molecule, something your brain makes on its own already. If neurons are the roads, then serotonin is a car road tripping all over your brain. This neurotransmitter plays a big role in mood regulation, impulsivity, and decision making, something the ADHD brain deals with. So by adding psilocybin, you add more serotonin in the form of psilocin. Psilocin fits perfectly into the parking spots reserved as serotonin receptors. To park is to bind. Receptors are the parking spots where chemicals get out and head on into work. Psilocybin binds with its favorite receptors located in the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala. Barrett pointed out in his paper that changes in personality traits were evident after the introduction of psilocybin. Now, this makes sense when you consider that the hippocampus is responsible for forming new memories, navigating the space around you, and processing emotions. The prefrontal cortex handles planning, achieving your goals, self-control, and impulse regulation, and personality. The amygdala does the real heavy lifting when it comes to your emotions. It is regulating them. It's handling your anxiety, processing them, and your ego. These three are interconnected by the superhighway known as the default mode network. Since it does most of your thinking, the default mode network is always on. Psilocybin cruises on in, binds to neurotransmitters, slowing down the flow of blood into your hippocampus, thereby calming down your default mode network. The traffic of rapid, automatic thoughts eases, allowing new construction of neural processes to begin, bringing neuroplasticity back to levels similar to childhood. Psilocybin gets right to your work using all that neuroplasticity to improve emotional processing, decision-making. Barrett's report also showed that the amygdala decreased its responses to negative emotional stimuli. Still, other reports have found disruption in the frontal connectivity of the cortex, meaning new roads are being funded and new roads built. As you can see, psilocybin engages the brain in a deconstruction and reconstruction process. And as Michiganders, we all know that road construction takes a long time. So too did the process of reconstructing my original personality. This is where integration becomes important. Integration is the act of putting your new tool, psilocybin, to work properly. As the amygdala relaxed the control that ego had on sense of self, it became my job to improve my ego. To do so, I integrated humility. I apologized. I made amends. I integrated a therapist that did test me for ADHD and did know how to work with me. I integrated a regular meditation practice and a much better diet. I integrated laughter. Slowly, over the course of 7 years, with regular microdosing and constant self-reflection, I changed my personality. I went from neurotic to open. I changed my thoughts, and then I changed my life. And now here I am, a high school dropout that has gone back to college and is on the dean's list. Fascinated every day. I love coming here. I love talking to my fellow students who amaze me with their intelligence and their humor. But mostly, I love not being trapped inside an untamed mind.